Okay, in this video we're going to talk about how do we build a custom cabinet or custom countertop for a sink that is in an angled position. This is not something that REVIT actually has set up as a default countertop. So we're going to do this by using one of the tools in REVIT to create a custom countertop. So what I'm going to do is go back to my level 1 and I'm going to go back to architecture, pull down component, and I'm going to grab what's called model in place because we're going to be modeling in place this actual object. So once I select that, I'm going to come down and select casework because that's the family that it would exist within. And I'm just going to go ahead and call this countertop. All right. And we'll just call it corner, just so I have an idea of what I'm calling it. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And now I'm ready to start modeling. And I'm going to start modeling this because I'm going to create an extrusion. So if you ever run Inventor, where you're going to get to see extrusions and blends and revolves and sweeps, they're all very similar functions. I'm going to grab the extrusion tab, and then I want to actually then come up with the closed loop geometry for the countertop. Now I only want to go ahead and create the countertop as large as necessary that it can then butt up to what would be a standard countertop. So given the space that I have, I'm obviously not going to run to here and stop and then build another countertop for here. I'm actually going to run all the way over to the stove and then see this feature here. If I jump back into that 3D view, what is that object? So yeah, I'm going to actually run directly over top of all of these. This is my dishwasher, and then I've got another cabinet over here. So I'm going to go ahead and run all the way over top of these and then run out to my stove. So we'll go ahead and jump into how to do this. So I'm going to go ahead now and grab my line tool, and I'm just going to go ahead and then trace in the back of the countertop, which is going to run directly against those walls. And my countertop's going to run all the way to the end of that cabinet. I'm going to then hit escape twice, and then I'm going to go ahead and extend this just slightly past the edge of this cabinet, because the countertop should overhang by approximately 1 inch to 1.5 inches. But given that this is an end panel, I'm not going to do that. End panel should generally be flush. I'm not sure if there's going to be something else going in here. Go ahead and grab my line tool and keep working through. Come to the front, and this is where I have a 2-inch line. I'm going to go ahead and extend this to be 2.5 inches. So that gives me my 1.5 inch overhang. And then I can keep coming around with my purple line. And come across this way, come to this point, and I'm going to work my way around this direction. There's 2. We'll do this same thing here. Bounce this out 1.5 inches and come across here. Now, the other thing I can also do is I can set up an offset geometry of 1.5 inches here. And if I set up offset geometry, that went to 1 foot, 1.5 inches, and I just want to trace this line. If I were to go ahead and do this and trace this line, got to run the other direction, from here to here, you can see that that offsets that 1.5 inches as well. All right, so there's a few ways you can do that to get that 1.5 inch offset. You can set it up. Then you got to come back and just trim up these edges so these edges clean up nicely so we don't have any overlaps or the like. Now I want to deal with the sinkhole, because the sinkhole is not going to be driven by parameters in the properties bar. I'm going to now grab and I'm going to go ahead and draw in the cutout for the sink. The cutout for the sink needs to be only necessarily the size of the bowls. So if I were to go ahead and create a cutout that's going to be the roughly the same size as the bowls themselves, it can be slightly larger, but it doesn't have to be much larger. All right, then it's going to only cut out that section of the sink. So that should work out fine. Next thing I want to look at is the height of the extrusion. Okay, so now I got to deal with the extrusion height. If I were to go ahead and extrude this now, I would basically come up with, if you look at my properties, my extrusion start is at 0, 0, and that's based on the ground level. If it goes up, extrusion end is at 1 foot. So it's going to be a 1 foot thick countertop starting from the floor and coming up. But I don't want that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is start my extrusion height at the top here, which is going to be the top of the cabinet. So that top of the cabinet is going to be 2'10" and a half from the floor. And then my extrusion end is going to be 2 foot. Actually, it's going to be 3 feet. Let's do 3 feet. That's going to give me the thickness of the countertop I'm looking for. Once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. And then I can come over here and hit the green check. Once I've now done that, I can go ahead and finish my model. And let's go back in and take a look at what I just created. Now you can see that I actually have a countertop that goes from the cooktop surface all the way across to the other cabinet. If I walk up here forward, we'll see, then take a look down here and see, well, it looks like the countertop is intersecting the bowls of the sink ever so slightly. So what I can do here is go back in and adjust the actual countertop just slightly and pull that back so I'm not running into the sink itself. So I can do that fairly quickly. If I select the countertop, edit in place, go back to my level 1, and then I can go ahead and find countertop again, edit the extrusion, and it just looks like these purple lines need to be pulled back. So that'd be fairly simple. Pull these back so I'm not intersecting the actual edge of the sink bowl, and that detail will be set. So then finish back out, finish the model, and we can go back in and take a look. Should just be looking down into the sink. Now actually what I see here, this is the cabinet. So this is where a corner cabinet, I'm now intersecting a corner cabinet, which should really then be taken care of in other ways, where you might end up, as you start working things in the corners, you can start to see them, seeing that cabinet, seeing that cabinet. Corner units can become a little trickier to play with. So that being said, we might need to get into editing cabinets next. But that's how you do a custom in-place countertop.